Washington State, no, I'm kidding, Washington State University Athletic Hall of Fame. He published Celebrating Your Gift of Life in 2021, and now devotes the majority of his time to various community activities toward his Gift of Life Foundation. He often speaks on and supports mental health awareness and suicide prevention as a core component of that foundation and his book. James is a 40-plus years president of Seattle. He believes in being a role model of success and professionalism for the scores of young people that he devotes so much of his time to. Please give him a warm welcome. Next to James is Dr. Petrie. Dr. Petrie is a senior advisor to the Vice President of the Office of Minority Affairs and Diversity at the University of Washington. As a UW graduate student in the late 1960s, Dr. Petrie was one of the founding Black student members whose calls for diversity and equity to university leadership led to the establishment of what became the Office of Minority Affairs and Diversity. Dr. Petrie's dedication to advocacy and educational opportunity for underrepresented minority, first generation and low-income students at UW is unparalleled. Dr. Petrie has long been entrenched in documenting the history of that office and has completed a book on its 50-year history titled Revolution and Evolution, the Story of the Office of Minority Affairs and Diversity at the University of Washington. Please give him a warm round of applause. Next to Dr. Petrie is Arif Khatib. Arif is the founder and president of the Multi-Ethnic Sports Hall of Fame. He's an entrepreneur, an author, film producer, business professional, educator, political and entertainment and community consultant. He established the Multi-Ethnic Sports Hall of Fame as a nonprofit in 1988 to broaden public awareness and understanding of the role of diversity and cultural tolerance in the growth of professional sports, and to provide education, social and career opportunities for youth. The organization has honored more than 380 sports legends and has recognized over 275 community leaders whose noteworthy contributions have improved the quality of life for countless individuals. Arif is a longtime advocate for youth academic and career excellence, business enterprise development, and community economic empowerment. He has exemplified a legacy of commitment, dedication, and responsibility to the community. Please give him a warm round of applause. Last, but certainly not least, is Dr. Carver Gayton. Dr. Gayton was born and raised in Seattle. After graduating from high school, he was granted a 4-year student-athlete football scholarship to the University of Washington, where he went on to receive his bachelor's, his master's, and doctorate degrees. His first full-time job was as a 21-year-old teacher of history and English at his alma mater, Garfield High School. In the subsequent years, Dr. Gayton held many prominent positions, from being a special agent of the FBI to a corporate director at the Boeing Company, and later a state commissioner under Governor Gary Locke. Possibly most importantly, Dr. Gayton was appointed in 2005 as the founding executive director of this beautiful museum. In that role, he led a $25 million capital campaign for the renovation of this beautiful building, formerly known as the Coleman School. His professional and community roles and accomplishments are so vast, we literally just do not have enough time today to list them all. He's authored several books. His latest publication being his autobiography, The Carver Clark Gayton Odyssey of a Seattle Native Son. Please give him the warmest. As I've told these gentlemen, this conversation today is going to be somewhat informal. I'll give prompts for questions, but hopefully it's a conversation. And then later today, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions too. On behalf of our entire team at DAM, we all thank you for your time today and your generosity of being with us. One more round of applause for this gentleman. Dr. Peyton, we're going to start with the first question. Being in this building again today, what are some of the thoughts you have being back here at the museum today?
Well, it's, I appreciate the question. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago that we started, and years have gone by, and there's been some excellent leaders, including yourself, have carried on, the good work that's made top museum, especially from staff. The thing is, there's a lot of changes that need to take place continuously with regard to ensuring that you're going to meet the interests of the population, of the community, and that's been happening. And so, coming back after all these years of down by the path, that, and I just I'm pleased with the fact that the museum is still moving forward, doing great things, and so proud to have had a role in making it happen. But there are a lot of people who are involved in starting the museum and continuing it. I'm a strong believer in working within teams, and we've been able to bring the essential teams together to make the museum the wonderful site that it is. Those are just a few things I would say.
Thank you. And all of you have been and visited and supported the museum so much over the years. I think we would all benefit in also understanding how did you come to meet each other? Maybe we'll start with you, James.
Wow. These three gentlemen here I've known for, however, at least 40 years. I've known of them. We lived up in Magnolia together all those years, and really got to know him over the last few years. And he's a regular attendee at our Saturday morning breakfast we have at the neighborhood restaurant there. He's been doing that for a good year or so, and just wonderful getting to know him and become a better friend, and him being a friend and mentor to me as well. Arif, I've met a good 20 years ago, most likely, and working with his multi-ethnic sports hall of fame. I remember we used to call it the African American Sports Hall of Fame, is that right? We wanted to be a little more inclusive, so we talked about that and said, okay, how do we broaden this out a little bit more? And multi-ethnic is the word we came up with. And he's been doing a great job inducting a lot of under-recognized athletes throughout the years, especially athletes of color that just didn't get the recognition, didn't make it to the big established Hall of Fame all over the country, football, baseball, basketball, name it. So Reef has really taken it upon himself to make that his mission, to recognize and give awards to these folks. They've done a great job. A lot of us don't know who they are. He's got a great book that talks about it, and that is something that he is just so passionate about. And we've worked closely together on all these things for the years. Emil I met over at the University of Washington, being a cougar running around over there in Huskyville. It isn't easy. But, meeting Emil through the breakfast group and other groups in town that we've been parts of over the years. Tremendous scholar, educator, and just a lifelong learner and a teacher of a lot of our young black folks that we need to know the history of. All three of them share the history readily, but you gotta be able to say, hey, let me just sit down and listen. let them talk, because they have the stories. And all three of them fill me with so much wisdom over the years. And, I want to carry on the legacy of all three of them forevermore. And that's how we all came to meet each other.
Great. One of the things you mentioned in that, great answer was the importance of education. And each of you have shown such a deep commitment to the importance of education, especially youth education. I'm hoping that you can talk to us about its importance in your life journey, and why has been such a focus in your professional lives. And we'll start with you.
First of all, thank you so much for having me here. I'm from Oakland, that's where I live. And I want to put in Seattle. My good family members here. I'm honored to be with these distinguished gentlemen here today. Thank you very much for having me here. It's important to me that we carry on the tradition of teaching about the history of contributions, primarily in sports as well, and the education of the younger people in sports. I talk about the many contributions that the athletes of color made to American sports and have gone unrecognized. So that's been my thrust over the years. Education is the key to all of it. And a lot of these athletes had education back in the day, well, still today, but they were dedicated to education. They got their degrees. Those who were able to go to get into college, get their degrees, they come out, they become educated in their own right. I found that to be very interesting and important in carrying out the need to educate our young people today as well as from the adults. There's always a need for more education.
Yes, I go way back in education. I grew up, my daddy was a sharecropper in Louisiana. So I grew up picking cotton. In fact, I picked cotton until I graduated from high school. For me, going to school was my life. It was what inspired me every day. Whenever it rained, I was so happy because then I could go to school. And when I went to school, I was encouraged. Teachers found out my potential, and I worked hard. I excelled in many different areas. And during that time period, I figured out how to be successful academically. And I got lucky. My guidance counselor recommended me for a science institute at Grambling College. It was called the National Science Foundation Institute for High School High Ability Students. I was the only person within a 150-mile radius to be chosen, with students from Texas and North Carolina and Georgia who were much more been exposed to much more subjects. I hadn't heard of calculus until we filled out the application. And so, but I decided that it didn't matter how much they knew, I could figure out how to be successful. And from that, I was successful in undergraduate school and in graduate school. And I figured out how to teach others how to be successful. So initially, I worked for the Environmental Protection Agency as a chemist, then for the Seabuckeye Corporation as a senior analytical chemist in North Carolina. I used to go to the North Carolina A&T Library. The students would be working on chemistry, and I would show them how to be successful in it, how to solve different problems. And I decided that I would rather be teaching other students how to be successful rather than being in a laboratory
and a bunch of nerdy, in North Carolina, racist people. So I decided that, and plus being a part of the Black Student Union, I wanted to make sure that the program that we started was successful. And so luckily for me, some of you may have heard of Dr. Millie Russell. She called me up and said, what would it take to get you back at the University of Washington? I said a lot more than less than what I'm making here. So they brought me back, they gave me an assistant vice president position to be a chemistry instructor at our study center. And what I was able to do is show many different students how to be successful academically. And one of my former students is here today, Alma Lucky. And she can testify to the fact that we taught students how to be successful. And it was based, and people were gravitating to me, different tutors, different instructors. So I decided that I would spend my entire career teaching students how to be successful. Our motto is teaching them to fish. Not only teaching students how to solve problems, but teaching them how to teach themselves to be learners and to become lifelong learners. So my entire career has been to help the students be successful. And we had a phrase that we would tell the students when they felt it was challenging, I would tell them, it ain't nothing but something to do, so let's get at it. So that's my whole thing about education, and I don't regret a minute of it. I spent 33 years, with 21 years as a chemistry instructor, and then I became the director of the instructional center. And we have boasted more than 25,000 students who've gone through that program and have been successful. So it's been a great reward. I retired in 2014, and they brought me back to write the book that you see here, and also to recruit more Black students, and to bring the Black Greek sororities and fraternities back to campus. So education has been my life. My mother and father only completed the third grade, but my daddy was so in education and was so proud of me and others in our family being successful academically. So education is my entire life.
Thank you. I'm going to come back to that in just a minute, but Dr. Gagan, also like you to follow up.
So I think that at the University of Washington, 1968, that was the same year that the Black Student Union was set up at the University of Washington. And I was asked to invite the head of the athletic department to come up because I had background in coaching and teaching at the University of Washington. So I was hired as the first African-American coach in any full-time coach in any sports at the University of Washington. So 1968 was an important time, and I wanted to make sure that I did all that I could to make sure that the Black students there at the University of Washington were going to be able to make it. And primarily, when I talk about Black students, I talk about the Black ball players there, because the Black student union primary thing that they said was needed to take care of whatever racist activity within the athletic department. I committed to myself to make sure these Blacks were all there and continued on to pretty fairly started all of them to make sure that was going to be okay. So that was my beginning role at the University of Washington. I won't tell you all because I want you to read some of my book. The thing is, education has what they said about his life, that's been part of my life. It really began with a family. And education comes in a variety of different ways. And my mother would sit down with us, when we were children, we had eight siblings in the family, right at the street, when we were over, and she would, she would read to us from the books of black poets, black authors. And we children had to go on. Specifically, she talked about her grandfather, who was an escaped slave, and who escaped from slavery after having terrible conditions in his life. And he sought out his brothers who had also escaped. He wanted to make sure he was happy to be in Kentucky. Where I just came back from just a few weeks ago, talking about that Underground Railroad that my grandfather was part of it. So educationally, I learned about black authors and black scientists and that sort of thing, especially my great grandfather. And my mother would sit down with us and take us away from what was going on. Unfortunately, I don't remember this with the airwaves and all that. She showed us down through stories about not only other great blacks in our history, but specifically about my great grandfather. And so that was quite frankly a beginning of my emphasis or interest in black history. And my mother, she had gone to Howard University and she stayed with the daughter of her grandfather that was there at Howard Baptist back in 1920. That's another source of my interest in education came in those early years, and then moving on into going grade school at the street, had some differences in relation to the teachers of some of the material abuse in relation to my experiences. But the very first teacher we had was a kindergarten teacher, and I was the only black in the classroom. Again, this is grade school, right about 1942 or so. And so I had a wonderful experience with the first kindergarten teacher. The next teacher I had in the first grade class, and this gives an indication how important, I don't think teachers realize how important they are to class and children. But this teacher, the first grade teacher, said, "Oh, this is what I need. I don't trust you." Here I am, 5 years old. And so I go home to my house, I walk away from the door, and so I go home and talk to my mother. I said, "Well, just trust me." But I had that, here we had two teachers, one was very good with the students, the other one was, had that hang up as it relates to, the black folks, particularly black children. So, going down the line, all the way from those early years, all the way up to, Garfield High School, we have different types of different teachers. Some are good, some are bad. But the thing is, the importance of having good teachers for young people and how they're going to continue on and being successful, that's extremely important. And I'm a strong supporter of early childhood education. If you don't get the right mindsets, those young people in those early years, beginning, it's really hard to get back on track with regard to that. So I had a private role, but again, I don't want to. I want you to read my book, but I was at one company, and give them some credit. But the Washington Roundtable really got involved in this thrust for early childhood education. And the head start of the concept and the importance of ensuring these kids get off on the right track, because if you can't get in early to actually young people in terms of them having a positive attitude toward education and years, and so it's very difficult to get them back on track. The data indicated to the benefit, it's to the benefit of all of us, businesses, schools, whatever, obviously, for them to get involved in early childhood education, because if you do it in the right way, there's going to be, more kids are going to be graduated from school, fewer kids are going to be, going to jail, they're going to prison. A whole variety of things that indicated, the data indicated that everybody would benefit if they get involved in early childhood. And it's really interesting when we got involved in these programs of buy-off and moving in that direction with the Washington Roundtable. And now it's coming back. We're talking more about that happening because we started that program back in the early 1980s. It's extremely important. So early childhood education, extremely important. We've got to start early, and we've got to have those teachers that are going to do the right job. Then I'm going to skip over some of these other years. Middle school, that was really tough. I got in a tassel in middle school at the meeting, and it could have held off my direction in life if I, got caught up in this situation. It was basically a fight, and this fellow really gave me a tough time, and it was a terrible fight. Again, I won't get into all the details, but I could have done today's situation you could get dismissed from school for what I got involved in. Anyway, that was a very difficult time, and my mother and the principal, committed principal, got involved and had me do chores and all that sort of stuff, getting me on the right track, and that helped me a great deal. Moving forward, actually, so that's another issue. That fellow I got in the fight with, later on I found out that he got committed to prison as a habitual criminal. So, but just by the grace of God, that could have been me. But anyway, that's another story. Garfield, I didn't have teachers going through those early grades that really committed me to do as well as I could. I ran into a King's Class teacher in my junior year at Garfield, and she came up to me and she said, Carver, I want you to do better. You aren't doing as well as you can do. And I'm going to make sure that you get on the right track and be successful because you have the potential to do well in this world. What that did to me, and I responded to her. I got involved. I was getting mediocre grades all the way up until that time, and then she got me. She got me on track. In fact, we were into Hamlet. I didn't think Hamlet was relevant, but I got an A in the class because I decided to soliloquies and memorize them. And so that got me on track, not just in relation to that class, but it got me in a direction in which I can do, as long as I work hard, I can do better. I can do better. I can do better. And I was involved in sports at that time. I was mediocre in that, and that opened up my mind about what I could do. And I think there's some spin-offs with regard to that. Was the fact that I was elected the senior class president, and after that class of football program, it was one of the best football teams that we had in history with Garfield. You win the city championship the following year, you win a state championship. That concept of you can do better transcended into different aspects of my life. And so much of that I owe to that teacher. He thought that I could do better. And so, in relation to education, we incorporated within education is when we coming back to sports. Those teams that we had at Garfield were teams, and they walked to, they talked and played together, as one. And then we did exceptional things because of those teams. And Matt was pointing out that he talks about and writes about in his books that through athletics, through good programs, good teams, you can excel. You can do all sorts of things. We played against teams both in high school at Garfield as well as at the University of Washington, who were many of those things we played with better athletes, individual athletes. We would beat something like the USC team. We played the USC team, they had better athletes than us, but we had a better team. We could come together, work together. This can relate to any aspect of life and business, or the school, or the university, or whatever. Is we could come together, work together for a common interest, a common goal. There's all sorts of wonderful things that can happen. And that concept has transcended into my, not only within the university situation, but at the bowling company. And one of the themes of the bowling company that, we had some difficulty with coming back now, we said, we needed it and work together. How can we work together? The president of the bowling company, I think there was 747 flying over the corporate office. I was with him. We were showing some students around from graduate students from Stanford University. And he said, "You see that bowling to 747 up there?" He said that. And I don't know if he arranged that or what, but the sun was shining on that thing. He said, "There's no one person that can put that machine together, can put that machine together." And it literally takes thousands of people to come together to put that aircraft in the air. And that aircraft, its point was, you have to be able to work together and have an appreciation for all the people in different roles with regard to putting that together. And he's talking about an airplane, but that concept is something that can happen within now. The University of Washington, I was talking to the president of the university about Dr. Jones, and he says, that's one of the things that he's really going to be focused on, in his tenure, and that is to be able, to break down these walls between different parts of the institution, so folks can work together for everybody's benefit. And so the themes, that's what I've learned what he's written in his book, and I was really pleased to see what he had in it after we met, and then I saw that, well, gosh, this is something that I've been talking about, thinking about, working on, for many years. So education is all incorporated in that, because I talk to a lot of people who say education, I do this at schools, I do this at the university, but the thing is, some of the qualities that you gain can be incorporated within any environment if you do it the right way. And so, if you're an educator, you say, well, I'm just good, that they think you're in just a school. But my background has been in political science education, organizational theory, that sort of thing. And how you transfer those things into a real life situation. So working with teams is something that athletes can really relate to, good athletes, but you can't do it alone. And this is what happens with the museum. We had unbelievable teams. I was involved to happen to be the leader of the man in those early years, but I would not have been able to do what we were able to accomplish if we had not had this unbelievable people who were working teams and who appreciated and encouraged each other in relation to what you want to have to happen in the end. So it's, education is fundamental. You learn a lot of that within athletics. And it's one time I've been outside. There's selling construction, the head of selling construction, he was a top guard at the University of Washington. He said he learned that he was all American. He was an all pro. And he said there's a panel on at the School of Business at the University. He said, I learned more from football. I learned more from football. And it comes, to being, successful, particularly emphasizing the team entity. I learned more in football than I did in my master's program in business. I mean, because of that emphasis on team. So there's a lot for these young athletes who need to be able to understand, knowing that it doesn't end from those 4 years, for example, in college. But what do you do for the rest of your life? And a lot of things you can learn from the rest of your life. Exactly what Larry is talking about within the I'm sorry, I talked too long.
Thank you for that. I guess, as a somewhat follow-up to that, what Dr. King just shared, for you, James, is you had an extended career that demonstrated the success in a team environment at the highest level. But so much of your book also deals with educating others around your process of self-development when success was no longer realized at the individual level. And I'm wondering if you have anything to share in relation to some of the core components that you share in your book, and obviously your commitment to education throughout that process, and then through the other side, back to what to that success mentality that touches so much of your thought process today.
Thank you. Yeah, and for me, education has always been the key. Even way back when I first started playing ball, I wasn't that good when I started. So I had to have a backup plan, and education was that. But then I realized the sports gave me on to the university level, which is really all I wanted out of it in the first place, was a way to go to college, be the first in my family to go to college. Got a scholarship at Washington State University, and that opened up doors of opportunities from there. And doors keep on opening the further you push yourself to elevate a little bit higher. And so, for me, education has always been the key. And I'm a lifelong learner. I'm always learning. I'm always wanting to know more, have a thirst for knowledge. The work I'm doing now is with mental health awareness, suicide prevention. After some personal struggles, I've gone through some mental challenges myself over the last 10 years. And coming out of that, coming out of that with a lesson learned of, I figured out how to make my way through all of that. Like Dr. Gabe was saying, I couldn't do it alone. I had a team around me, a team of medical professionals, a team of mental health professionals, a team of deep and good, committed, intimate friends who supported me throughout all that. I was talking earlier on our podcast we did earlier this week, some of my great mentors that I've had along the way. And I've always had this affinity of hanging out with guys, black men especially, 20 years older than me. Even when I was 20, I had 40-year-old friends that were just teaching me the way. My old mentors, both of them passed away last year, George Radley and Lenny Wilkins. And both of them tremendous mentors through my life. And great friends after the game was over, teaching me more about the game of life. And Reverend Samuel Barrett McKinney, another great mentor of mine. Dr. Edward Jones over at University of Washington. Tremendous black men in my life that showed me the way, taught me how to be upstanding and doing the right thing, working hard, continuing to push yourself as best you can. And so that's what I put in my book here, is that you can make it through whatever difficult time you want in your life if you don't give up. And one of the problems that plague our community is we have this victim mentality a lot of times. And we don't see our way out of that and say, okay, I can make my way out. I was just up in Alaska last week working with the indigenous tribes up there in southeastern Alaska. And they are so down. Reverend McKinney used to say, I've been down so long, getting up ain't even crossed my mind. You know, and that's where they are. And that's where a lot of us are, also in our Black community. We don't want to be down so low, getting up, ain't even crossed our mind. It's got to keep crossing our mind. We've got to keep getting up. But we can't do it alone. We do it with the help of each other, reaching out, support, family, friends, community. And that's how we get ourselves up and keep on going to be the best that we can be. So that's how I've learned with education. That's what I continue to teach younger folks now. I got folks behind me now, 20, 30 years younger, that I'm showing the way and teaching and paying it on backwards and the same way these fellows paid it towards me.
That's a perfect segue back to something Dr. Petrie was sharing with us earlier. Actually, referencing the benefit of realizing how you can help educate and empower youth, really teach them how to go about solving the problems that they face. I think it's extremely relevant now. Both the core of the importance of having people invest in our youth in that way, but then also what you were working on in relation to your book in the 60s that brought about so much systemic and positive change at the UW. What would you say to the students who are frustrated now? And how would you help use the lessons that you learned back then to help them solve problems they face today?
Initially, I would say that you have to know what is taking place before now. You need to know our history. Malcolm X said a lot of time, if you don't know your history, you're bound to repeat it. And you're there right now. And because one of the reasons is we didn't follow through of what took place in the 60s. We were strong, committed advocates for social justice and educational equity and making sure that our people are represented in higher education. And one of the things that we did was we studied history. We studied John Hope Franklin, New Bennett. We studied Franz Fanon, W.B. Du Bois. And we took it from an intellectual point of view. And through that process, we became more politicized, more radicalized. We understood that our plight was just not just our plight, but it was a third world plight. It was folks who were oppressed and exploited throughout. And what I would say in addition to that is we should learn what happened through those periods. There have been concessions made for our demands. It's okay, we'll address those. President Odegaard back in 1960, so we'll make it happen. So we committed to creating a program that is now 60 years old in 2 years. But what made us relevant and made us able to persist was that we never let up. We took on every challenge as part of Office of Minority Affairs. We addressed those challenges. And we never rest on our laurels because they gave us some things we knew we needed more. So we consistently asked for more, consistently demanded more. And so you have to be able to continue to push forward because we're not free. So until we're free, until everybody is free, we have to continue to not be satisfied. Because we know, it's a bait and switch. They're gonna give it to you, and then when you start thinking you got rights and, the Constitution applies to you, and you can rest on that, and you can argue that. And look what's happening. You got the highest court saying, no, it doesn't mean anything. Our words, we can take words and twist them around to fit what we want. And so we have to understand that the words don't mean a lot unless the results match those words. And that's not what has been happening. I was advisor to the Black Student Union for 21 years, and that's what I would tell them. The English language sounds so good that you can make it sound whatever way you want to. You buy it without saying, what's the bottom line? Doesn't mean anything. They're just words. It's a con game. And so, my position is, and what I tell students, is you gotta have your goals set on what you want to happen on behalf of not yourself as an individual, but for our community. Because that's what's important, is our community. We need to focus on not on individuality, but communalism. That we need to be fighting on behalf of our community, fighting on behalf of those who can't fight for themselves. And so you have to continue that fight. You have to stay up on it. You have to know the history. Police brutality started long before Black Lives Matter. And we made that the big issue. And, while I have the stage, that left-handed fist is not who we are. This is the power. This is the strength. Why we gotta switch up? Don't try to reinvent. Continue on with what we started. What was started with Nat Turner, Denmark Beasley, MLK, Stokely Carmichael, Louis P. Newman. We need to move that forward and make sure that we understand what they fought for is the same thing we should have been fighting for, and it's the same thing we should be fighting for now. The strategy is different because they learned from what we did, so we have to come up with something different. In my case, what I recommend is that you make the intellectual argument. You can take those words that they use to trick you into thinking you were free, and take those words and make the case that we still are not free, and we still need to be fighting for our rightful place in the society and the world.
That's my wife, Carmen. She's shaking her head. She's there. Okay. She's giving me the high.
Listen to it.
Yeah. Okay. Based on what Emil said, in the past is for the past is not dead, it's not even past. It's still with us. And people want to say, well, that's back in those days, these things are still with us. I just want to give you a scene back in, back in 1875. My great-grandfather was an escaped slave, active in the abolitionist movement for years. His close friend, Frederick Donaldson, he was being interviewed by a young black reporter, from Boston Board. And he was very open with this young man. He said, when he was talking about slavery, he said, I didn't think during my lifetime that slavery would ever go away. But he escaped from slavery when he was in his late 30s. And he ultimately ended up in again, but he came back and fought against the amendments of slavery after slavery had been done. But what he said to this young man is that I didn't think slavery would ever go away. And my fellow slaves felt the same way. That, but the thing is, he said, I could sit down and talk to you about all that I experienced, as a slave, and my comrades who are, slaves with me. But you never would understand or feel what we endured. But the thing is, he kept up the fight. He and many of his brothers, kept up that fight, continuing all the way up to when slavery came down. But he didn't expect it to happen. But the thing is, we have to continue on. I hear a lot of young folks saying, why do we can't do what we did, 40, 50 years ago. We have to, and we need action now and so on. But that kind of attitude that he had is that we need to continue on. Even though slavery is gone, that terrible institution, probably the worst type of slavery in the history of this country. So we cannot continue, wash our hands and give up and all. So we have to continue. He said we cannot think about what is going to happen from 10 years from now, what happened from 15 years from now. So give us 50 years. But we have to, but the remnants of it are so terrible that it's going to take time to get rid of the remnants. But we have to, he's saying that in the late 1800s, and he said we need to go in a direction that's going to catch us. And what he was talking about was going to where the beginning of the civilized movement. He predicted we can't do it in 10 years, can't do it in 15 years. We have to continue the fight. And it was Henry, what she said when Stillman told her, I don't want to stay in the mess. I don't want to stay in the mess. I'm just going to go ahead and do what I need to do to get to whatever. And she said, the thing is, if you're black in America, the thing is, you're born in the mess. And so those issues that come up, you have somehow or other have to have the gumption, you have to have the strength, you have to have the determination to keep up the fight, but don't lose your cool. And keep up, we gotta keep up the fight. Now, sometimes you can't do what it was done back 30 years ago, but there's different approaches that can take place, that'll take the issues in the long run. And so the fight, from that point of view, the fight continues, but we have to, we can't let up. There's different approaches in relation to the fact that the fight continues.
Thank you. Speaking of the fight, so many of the athletes, Maurice, that you have documented and preserved their stories in your book, have been agents of change. Have used their platform to fight in their way for social advancement. Why do you think sports have been historically so often essential around civil rights issues or human rights issues?
When I was teaching in the business school in Oakland, I discovered that that did not give me what I really wanted. I wanted to reach a wider audience, talk about the importance of the contributions that non and professional athletes have made to American society. And in doing so, a lot of that research and involvement, I discovered many things that I was unhappy with. Primarily, the contributions that these athletes had made to American sports and society and humanity. As James mentioned early on, as a member of my Hall of Fame, thank you, James, for that, was going unrecognized. And that they did not have the ability to reach out. We didn't have social media, had limited media contact, certainly not in support from the audience or the community that did not want to see us succeed. So consequently, these athletes who broke down the racial barriers did in really bad conditions, but they were able to excel. I think of a gentleman who graduated UC Berkeley with an engineering degree, an All-American, but he didn't find a job with his education. And I began to do more research, and I found myself being attached to that subject of the inequality, the lack of education on behalf of our society, about the contributions and the sacrifices and tribulations that these athletes have gone through. I speak of another person that James mentioned in Alaska, an indigenous athletes. His name is Billy Mills. And in my book today, pick up one of these, I can assure you, I guarantee you, you'll be astounded at the athletes within this book and the contributions they've made to society. You'll be astounded. And Billy Mills won a 10,000 meters gold medal in Tokyo and 1965. And before that, no American ever won 10,000 meters. And there hasn't been one since. So you think about that and put it in proper perspective here. Our crown and gold in America are the Olympics. If it were not for a Native American or an indigenous person, we'd be shut out in the 10,000 meters. I think that's not significant, and I think it should be told. Reading about his story, how he was treated at the University of Kansas, it was almost been tears too. He's also in the film that we developed. Some information over on if you want it. To hear him tell the story when we filmed him, it's just really unbelievable. Many people aren't aware that there were 3 females who played in the Negro League. I'm not telling you they were ball girls. They played second baseman, shortstop, a pitcher who was taught by Satchel Paige how to throw the curve. And I had many, I'm back up a little bit so I tell you a little bit, but 80% of the people in my book, I interviewed them and I know them well. So I think I'm blessed, fortunate, lucky, whatever you want to call it, to have known these folks, that close to them, they've been my friends. Mainly Peanut Johnson picture told some stories that I feel relevant all the time about how she got the name of Peanut in picture. See the book, the film. And so it put me on a course of education in a different form. Educating our society about the contributions made by people of color to American sports and society. And I believe that I know that will make you feel better and make America a better place. Use that today. Being able to get along, stop the hate, and places of love and appreciation for the sacrifices that these persons have put America reach where we are today. So the next time you see the Olympics, it's in track and field, whatever it is, remember those who came before us remember their sacrifice. Because they made it possible for all of us, athletes and non-athletes, when they broke down these racial barriers, kicked in doors, and had come in from the backside. They couldn't get a job after graduating from one of the best universities in the world, University of with an injury, you can't get a job. We have to have more of an appreciation for the sacrifice that these folks made. Remember that sacrifice, tells their story, and I invite you to read it.
This question is going to be the same for each of you. And just openly admit it's rather wrong. But I personally am just really curious to hear your answers to it. Each of you has seen so much change since you began your life journeys. What are some of the societal things you think about most and reflect on, maybe the longest, with regards to those changes you've seen? We'll start with you, James.
Good question. I've been really involved with so many of our efforts around Seattle for 40 years. African American community efforts. I joined every group in town, breakfast group, and Table 100, and all the rest of them, Black Collective down in Tacoma. And working really with the sleeves rolled up with education for our young people. Getting us to really start to value what education is all about and how that can open the doors of opportunities for you. I'd like to see more progress than I've had seen over the 40 years. We're still not where we need to be. We've come a long way, but we got a long way to go. And for our youth especially, to survive and thrive in this world of technology, which we don't know a lot about, AI, which we don't know a lot about, the internet and all the other things out there that it has to be part of our culture, it has to be part of our lives, for our young people especially, to have to move on and do some great things out there. Great opportunities now for everybody, but we have to apply ourselves. And we just need to really focus down on education. And my other part of that is getting our Black men, re-engaged with their families, with their children, and keeping a nuclear family together. I don't know about all of us here, but I know Carmen and I come from two-parent households. Neil, you, I'm sure, Arif, look at us, two-parent households. That's a rarity nowadays, and our youth are suffering from that. So those are the things I like to see. More emphasis on education and giving back to our nuclear families with mother and father raising these children.
But what is come up with a strategy that will convince parents, the community, to get our youth involved. We are missing out on so much that students can gain. We gotta convince them that, being a football player, basketball player, rapper, only a few gonna make it. Get that education. There's a hope that says education is the hope of our people. And without education, our future is lost. So that's what we need to focus on. It's a serious challenge. We got to figure out a way to get more involved. And we should also celebrate those who have used education to take them from one level to a much higher level. I think it would be great if we talk more about successful people in the realm of education and what way it has taken them. My story, sharecropping to where I am today, and also to the many students who started from single parent households foster care that have chosen education and that have moved up the ladder in society. And I like to, in my book, I like to talk about all the successes of the various alumni. And not just for black people, but for people of color, for underrepresented, first generation and all that. Rio Mioas, who was retired CEO and president of a health center, said that without the education that Latinos gain in America, it wouldn't be, in Seattle, Washington, it wouldn't be a professional group. We could say the same thing about blacks, American Indians. And so, in my book, I like to celebrate, we call them notable alumni, fantastical notables. Mayor Norm Rice, Leroy McCollum, Judge Judy Hightower, Judge Jamal Whitehead, who is now the federal judge that came through the program, who, without the program that we fought to establish at the University of Washington, wouldn't have had those opportunities. We need to celebrate them more and to make them role models. When I was in college, our chemistry professor used to tell us about students who had gone on before us and have been successful. And to me, I remember those. I wanted to be like those people. I call them role models in absentia. So we need to focus on those role models. Michael Jordan, Dr. Donaldson, yeah, that's okay for them. And, you know, I might say that they're not doing a lot for the people, you know, who admire them, who buy their shoes. You know, instead of putting money in education, when they buy Lamborghinis and all the other fancy cars and all that, put the money into the community and celebrate those. So we need to teach our young people to celebrate those. When I was back in the 80s, to see one of the parents from the garden school used to volunteer with the students. In fact, I would go and teach at the garden school before I went to the job that I was being paid for. And we talked about it. We celebrated those people. And many of those students who now go on to be successful still remember those days. And so we just have to, once you have an audience, we need to focus on celebrating those who have been successful. And of course, yeah, to be educated, computer science, AI, all that's well and good, but we need to pursue it on behalf of our community and not for ourselves. Service is the highest order you can do, not being rich and showing off with your fancy cars and all these other things. It's the service to the community. The service to those who need us is what our focus should be. And we should, no matter what, education is the key. And there's a saying, this doesn't decline. And to me, that means a lot. So it doesn't mean much for me to be successful. It means a lot for me, for those who I've influenced that are successful. Those are the people I like to brag about. There's a cardiologist who came to our program from the same parent household. His mom told me he'd probably just be a C student. But when he joined up with us, we told him he could be a Hall of Fame, as we call it. And now he's a cardiologist making big bucks. And each year he gives at least $10,000 to a scholarship to our students. Those are the people we want to celebrate.
Thank you. Reef, anything you'd like to add?
I'm thinking back at what James just said about the importance and how fortunate we are to had two parents in home, that is practically non-existent today. But generally, there's at least hopefully one parent in the home. And I believe that that's where it begins. The educational process began there, where that parent, singular or two, must begin to teach their children respect, the importance of education, and how to obtain it. As you mentioned about social media today, we need it, and it's done its job, but there's also harm in it in many ways because we won't use it the way we should sometimes. We don't encourage our students to go online and study about those that came before us. I'll pick a person as a role model and find out how that person got to be in the capacity of a role model. How was that person called a role model? Why? Getting less news on the phone than from books or from the library. They're closing libraries. And that to me is a tragedy because it doesn't give young people a place to go where they can actually study on their own. They don't really have to because they get everything at home on the phone, but they're only going to get what they want on the phone, not what they should have. And in order to be able to get a full spectrum of how to live in this society, and if the society is going to be ahead, you must be able to have a full idea of what's going on, what's happening around you, not just from what the editors give you on your phone, because they tell you what you want you to have, that's all you get. You have to read, you can read between the lines and make up your own decision so that you can grow your own educational process. I encourage each and everyone, take more interest in your children, what they're doing. Be a parent, quite frankly, and tell them what they can and cannot do or should not do. And be responsible for their results and the consequences from it.
Good responses. Just to give you a couple of perspectives that I have. I'm not giving up on the whole concept of early childhood education. But parents working with their children in those early years creates a situation where they see where they see the world. And it could be negative because the early was it can be positive. I'm saying focus on the positive, bringing the parents and children together those early years so that they're going to look in a positive direction. And the research indicates that everybody's benefiting. It's an enlightened self-interest. The thing I have a problem with, maybe someone else can answer this, when they see the data and they see the results, and people are going to be paying less money taxes, and people have to go to jail, people are going to be arrested, people are going to have to go on welfare. They see the data there, but they still, and that means less taxes, those things happen. And what is it that keeps, the majority or whatever, in a way in which they can't see the figures and say that that's something that I want to be part of. And then another one, an experience I had, this was a while ago, when I was teaching in Garfield after I heard Martin Luther King's speech that came from, this is back in 1961, my first job that I had. Just a couple years after that. But after he spoke, I was committed to teach in my English courses and my U.S. history courses, what blacks in literature, in science, and inventions that were made and all that sort of thing. I made sure that I incorporated that within my classroom setting. And then I had a situation, the head of the social studies department at Garfield. She called me in, I was doing this with her, and she called me and said, "Carter, I want to talk with you." I said, "Oh my," I said, "What was she going to say?" Because she was a strong woman, and she had opinions and so on. I said, what did I do? And so, anyway, she brought me into her office. He said, I had a young man, he told me his name, he said that, Mr. Beaton is talking all these fairy tales about what black people and what these poets and what these writers, that black people do. So I just want to let you know, he's telling you this bad information. And so I said, I tried to get down the door now, open up the leave. And what she said was, I want you to continue to do what you've been doing. She was the daughter of a governor back in the 1930s. I want you to continue doing what you're doing. It's supremely important. And one enlightened teacher back in the 60s. Okay, so I said, oh gosh, and by the way, the student's name was such and such. And it was a black boy. As a black child, he felt that he could not be in a position at a point of being like the folks I'm talking about. And isn't that a crying shame? Isn't that a crying shame that he's gone all the way up to be a junior in high school and has that view of people like him, thinking he couldn't get to that direction. I wasn't mad. I was mad at the system. I was mad at the teachers, all those folks that made me feel that way. And I didn't do it, obviously, I wasn't going to do anything to that black young man. But it's just a shame of what the problems we have within our system that's embedded, within our mindsets. Just imagine how the white kids felt with regard to that situation. I mean, the work continues. I said, we can't give up. My great-grandfather couldn't give up what he experienced and all of his slave friends experienced. He kept that. And we got rid of them in a lot of, we aren't in slavery. But we're in a terrible situation that we should not be in. And so we have to do a lot of work. How do you change the mindsets of these folks in relation to them, knowing that they would be better off if they moved, if there are, in a different direction. There's in fact, there's a white professor at the University of Washington. My last year there, and the riots were going on down in Arkansas, and I think it's President Eisenhower, came down and said that these kids are being brought into the schools. I think that was in Arkansas, whatever. And some of the reporters would ask us, why are you not letting these young black kids come into the schools to desegregate and they're spitting on these children that are going into the building. And the reporter asked this one fellow this morning, I said, why are you doing this to these children? Why are you doing this to these children? He says, I don't know. There's a white man. There's something stuck in my craw. You got a whole lot of people out there, and that mindset is stuck in the craw. How do you begin to deal with it? How do you begin to deal with it? Keep hope alive is important. But the thing is, it's important to keep saying that, but because of that hope, what results do we have with regard to the hope? So we got to, it's important, but the thing is, we need work harder and brighter and to take care of all this business that is tearing this country apart.
I think this would be a great transition to a significant and monumental award that you'd like to present. Dr. Gates.
gave each one of you an assignment. You don't have to be in sports. But sports is very, 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 very popular today, more so than ever. And next time that you watch any kind of a sports program, baseball, football, basketball, hockey, cricket, boxing, soccer, doesn't make any difference. There was a gentleman whose name was Kurt Flood. Everybody ever heard of Kurt Flood? Kurt Flood fought the reserve cause. As I mentioned early on, I had the pleasure, lucky to meet a lot of these folks. I knew Kurt quite well. Picked him up once a week and we would have conversations. I asked him a question, I asked him, it's great. You're making this supreme sacrifice by taking your case all the way to the Supreme Court. Why are you doing this? Now they offer you $100,000 to go pay for the Phillies. You're making $60,000 with the Cardinals. Why are you doing this? He said, I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it for the athletes in the future. I mention that because there's a parallel. As you watch these sports, every player you see today that's making the millions and millions of dollars is because of the sacrifice Kurt Flood. It's called the reserve clause, which allowed an athlete to go from one team to another. And we see today sometimes big 4 or 5 different teams. They're no longer under contract to one because Kurt said he was not going to be a slave to anyone, and he was going to play with the Phillies, and they told him that if you do, you will never play baseball again. That's the way it is. And he did. Kurt was a 6-time All-Star, led the league for 5 consecutive years, over 300, committed less errors, yet he is not in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. A tragedy if they ever will. I mentioned that as a precursor to what we're going to give for Dr. Carver did. Of all of his achievements, the one that is most important to our organization is that the fact he is a trailblazer. He made it possible for all the athletes today to be inspired by his achievements. Oh, we could give him a Lifetime Achievement Award and that would be appropriate as well. But a Trailblazer Award has more importance as far as I'm concerned and has a greater impact because he had to suffer through some things to make it possible for us today. So consequently, in the middle of this, I have offered the opportunity to award this award to okay. I can think of no one that has broken down more barriers than this guy right here. There's a lot of things for humanity and society, and you should be rewarded for it. So, this is for you. I might add, we're fortunate today to have the manufacturer, whoever doesn't term, of this trophy in the room. Chuck Cusack right there. Chuck, thank you very much. Chuck delivered this trophy to us. It's a special trophy that was made for us 22 years ago. We've used it 67 times throughout the world. We've given awards for those who are inducted, who were inducted. You're going to receive one for the Trailblazer Award. Have blazed the trails and become a pioneer. Thank you, the done to you, my friend. This thing weighs 20 pounds, so and they don't come for a time of doesn't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just really sit there and put this back on top of it. And if you just want to say a couple of have any remarks you want to say about this? I'll give you that.
Well, thanks, Eric. Thank you so much. I tell you, this is such an honor, for me to be in this environment, to be on the panel with these outstanding, the gentlemen who, admired, for so long, and then my new friend, Arif. That's been a couple years, but I'm enlightened by all this that you've written, and I was happy to see some of the things that you're talking about within your works are things that I buy in on, and then really getting the support of man for allowing us to have this session here today. So it's just wonderful. But I had some remarks I was going to make, but I tell you this, I talked more today than I had any intention. But I just want to say that I was born and raised here in Seattle, and I grew up here in this part of the city. Went to the Northern Grade School, Northfield High School. Had so many friends that some of whom I could see in the audience that I grew up with, talked with, and my values that I had, obviously not sure that it's come from my family and my friends, but growing up in this neighborhood and seeing the folks that I grew up with and the activities that we were involved in, made me the person that I am today. And I just want to thank you for allowing me to be part of this community and being able to express myself beyond that, more than I should. But I just want to say that I was blessed to be able to be born in this vicinity, in this area, and so much of what I'm about that has been mentioned, about me as a result of this community, and how much I've enjoyed it. I've been blessed, and again, I want to express my relation. I guess you would have she's sleeping. But anyway, I've been blessed with some wonderful people in my life, and so you all, being here and the recognition of that is it is beyond my expectations. But I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep it. Thank you very much.
Let's go sell some books. I'm gonna hold this way for the time being.
Well, that's going to conclude the conversation. Zoe, do we have enough microphones for Q&A? Just 1 second. We'll figure out how to get a mic to you. Does anybody have any questions of this group? Okay, great, Jeff.
So, we're listening to you, gentlemen. Seems that there's a common thread in all your journeys, and it seems to me as I'm listening, whether you started this community or wherever you began your journey, there's always been tremendous wind in your face. There's always been tremendous challenge, and there's always been dark clouds approaching you as you begin your journeys. And I'm just wondering what it is that each of you were able to prevail and to make extraordinary things happen in very, very difficult circumstances. And to celebrate today, we all celebrate your gifts in so many things that you've done. But how were you able to get around the headwinds?
It's very challenging to begin with. Because when I established the Hall of Fame in 1998, I wanted to be a nonprofit. And I said, all these years, it was a nonprofit. As such, the challenge has been in maintaining the purpose of the Hall of Fame, obviously, has been financial support, as most nonprofits have to address. But what has sustained me is the fact that I know the work I'm doing is God's work. And I know that it's making a difference because there have been hundreds of persons, students, athletes, who have mentored, inducted in our Hall of Fame, who received other awards, have offered their appreciation and thanks. That has sustained me in this organization, and will continue to sustain each other as long as I'm alive. I have not finished the job.
Yeah, well, we're all gonna answer that. Okay. Hey, Chuck, good to see you again. For me, I think it's, a deep-rooted faith. I've always been a man of faith, even from a little boy. Knowing that God will find a way. He will help me to find a way. He brought me through my challenges, mental health and suicide thoughts, when I wanted to throw it all away. He brought me through it. And he said, hey, James, I brought you through this, and you've learned some things. Now I want you to go out there and teach likewise. Share with others what you know. Help them get through those difficult times you went through. So faith really had a big, and still has a huge part of my life. And I mentioned Samuel Reverend McKinney, great mentor. I used to sit at his feet at his house at Young Lake Ridge. Sit there for 2 or 3 hours, and he just poured wisdom into me for all his years of living and his experiences, and God also surrounded me with great men of character throughout my life, and that's really the key.
It has been from the beginning, from my immediate family, from my father writing about me for years. So I knew that I could not fail. And the fact that if people depend on me, they can depend on me, I'll be there. That's what drives me. So the opportunity to be able to be positive in someone's life, in someone's career, is really priceless. So I've never been really discouraged about this. And I always knew that, coming from the segregated South, it was going to be a struggle. So, and what I do now and what I've done in the last 50 years is much, much more easier than what I did in my first 22 years. So this is really a piece of cake. And the fact that so many people who have given me credit for impacting their lives is really what drives me, and I never get discouraged. And I believe in this Mozambique liberation cry. The struggle continues. Victory is certain. And I know victory may be beyond my generation, but I know it is certain. So that's what keeps me going.
That another question, an important question. And I must say the thing that keeps me, several things keep me going, is being associated with one of my lifetime and being able to be accepted by gathering as in this room. But certainly my family has been a major factor and their model. My parents never told me, do this, do that, or whatever. But I knew what to do based on their example. And then there's another thing that I found out as I was writing my book. There was something that kept popping up in the book, and that related to my great grandfather, who was born a slave, and all the things that he endured, the beatings and all that sort of thing, and what he watched, as a young man, in terms of some of the things that were happening to associates. But the thing is, there would be things that would pop up over different periods of my life that related, to my great grandfather. Things that I did not seek out, but they would just come and, like I say, remember this, remember what he went through here. And I didn't seek out a lot of these things. I thought, these are my muse. And I came to that conclusion because of the things that I didn't initiate. And he would come into my life out of nowhere. I'll just mention a couple of ones. My mother telling this, because this was her grandfather, my great grandfather, Louis Clark was his name, and found out that he had written a book about his life in 1845. This is before Frederick Douglass outlined all that he went through with the thing. This is before Frederick Douglass's book, had come out, for example. And found out, that he was closely associated with Harry Beecher Stowe and documents and all that kind of stuff. He said, there's something that, I thought, well, this is wonderful. We have a relative that's in print. Okay, so we didn't get beyond that, but this was the first that my mother, that was her grandfather, had ever, said anything about it. And then later on, there was a cousin or a relative of my great grandfather came up and said that there's some more writings that he was involved in. This is years later. And then I said, well, and I talked to one of my professors at the university, and I said, he had dictated this book by anti-slavery, mover and shaker. And he said, well, this isn't relevant with us historians because, Frederick Douglass, for example, that's who was important to go into these kinds of things because he knows how to read and write. He says this is that came from the great father. He dictated it to that head of the anti-slavery movement, and so that's not relevant. It's not. And I said, okay, that's great. Okay, thank you very much. And so I quit thinking about it. And then years later, after I finished my Ph.D. with Florida State, teach down there, ran into a fellow I but we were jogging together, in Tallahassee, and I was looking for you a couple months. I finally asked him, I said, what is your area with regard to your work, here for the city? He said, well, I'm with a team and really, seeing slavery, the anti-slavery movement out of Yale. And that's so, and I said, well, that's interesting. My great-grandfather was a slave, and he was in the abolitionist movement and all that. He says, well, Bert Carter, let me know who he is. I might know because I got this team going at Yale, looking into that same area. I said, Louis George Clark, Carter, I've got all sorts of information. Here they come, 3,000 miles away. The family doesn't know anything, know anything. All these things that this fellow had, about him. And so, what had happened, long story short, I gave me a box of all of these things. I never did go into it. That's why I was hired away from bowling, and I couldn't, the work I was doing was bowling, I couldn't get into anything else. And so what transpired, later on, a fellow from Buckeye, New York, he said, is a historian up there, and his expertise is in the railroad movement, and your great-grandfather is well known as considered a hero up there in Buckeye, because that was the end of the Underground Railroad. And I said, my God, that's really simple. I didn't get into that box that I got from the family. So I left that and I found out all this information about this group. But I didn't initiate these things. And then there was a situation where I stood on the same property at the courthouse in that's the thing, in Kentucky, that he was voted off for 4 times his great-grandfather. And I was with my daughter at that time, and something hit my knee. Here is where he was sold, 3 times, my knee buckled, my daughter got me. I'm finding it and writing, more about it. Anyway, the long story is that these statistics that's what my great-grandfather did. That's what two books directly related to him. But that's why I decided to write my book, because I didn't want to be in his situation, because he died before he had drafted it, and I wanted to write a draft about his life. And so I didn't want to be in that situation. I didn't consider myself in the same level as him in terms of what he had done in the movement and as close as Heritage Restored and so on and so forth. And so that's when I decided to delve into all that. So those are the things that have driven me in relation to what I've been doing. With all those other elements like family defense and so forth. But my muse is still with me. He's still with me. He's still with me.
I'd like to thank all of you gentlemen and scholars for being here today. My question is for Dr. Petrie. I'm also an alum of the University of Washington, class of 2000, and I have you to thank and the EOP. My great-nephew was also a graduate in the aeronautical and civil engineering program. And so my question to you is, and you may address this in your book, what stories or anecdotes did your father use to kindle your thirst for education and stoke your curiosity? I'm just interested, because you said he was a sharecropper, didn't have very much education, so I'm just amazed and interested in aspect of that.
He was, he told me about the different teachers that I had. And that how much he respected them. Like there's a principal, he wasn't a principal at my school, but he was a principal at a nearby school. And he had a master's degree. And my dad thought that was the ultimate. Mr. Frank Gallison, he talked about it all the time. He respected teachers so much, that when up until the 5th grade, I was called a Leo teacher, which is the French pronunciation of Emile. And one of my teachers said, she saw my birth certificate, and she said, your name is not Emile, it's Emile. If it was Emile, it would be spelled A-M-I-L-E. And she had a French name too, but she didn't know, but my parents said, if they said your name is Emile, then that's what it is. So he was so respectful, and he had high regards for Martin Luther King. And, but it was to me, it was his respect for being educated. And he bragged about me so much, I could only have to succeed. But it was those teachers that he had the highest regard for.
I have a degree, a bachelor's degree in microbiology. That would not have been possible with him in that program. And that program was really important because as African American students, we didn't always get the support. We could go in there and we could talk about our degrees and all that, but we could also support one another. And sometimes we'd be the only Black person or person of color in our class, so you weren't always invited to the study groups. And you could walk into a classroom and even the teacher would look at you like you don't belong. And also, we didn't have the advantage of being a legacy student. You know, their grandfather, great-grandfather, and everybody in the family had already gone through that, so they benefited from that. And then they benefited from being in a fraternity or a sorority where they would talk about, you know, testing and things like that. So, and I'll also say that my boys are also mentored by, you know, so you're talking about generations of people that this man has affected. And so I'm wondering about DEI, the way it's being erased right now, and how, you know, even if you get into a program with DEI, you're tested the same as everybody else. So that might have been your way in, but you're still required to do everything else that's going on. So what are your thoughts about what's going on with what seems like the erasure of DEI? How do we stay encouraged by, in the light of, it seems like you're constantly being told you're not worthy, that you're not qualified for things. So just in life, how do you move through that without just feeling super discouraged about it?
Yeah, well, when it comes to DEI and racial admission based on different factors in terms of DEI, the one thing we need to be clear on, if you get into the University of Washington, you know, since 1998, race could not be used. So you got in on your own merit. And that's what I tell the students when they come in. You don't have to feel like you have the imposter syndrome. We talk about that a lot, like they don't belong. But you got in based on your credentials. And it was, I mean, when were you at UW? When did you start UW?
85.
85?
85, 40 years
Well,
ago.
85, they has changed the admission requirement a couple of times. They had what they call AI, so you had to get an admissions index. If you didn't get a certain index, you weren't gonna get in. It was not based on race anymore. Initially, we fought for that because, we knew that the high schools were not preparing our students to be, ready for college. So, but we made, for that, we decided, when we made the demands to the president, that we wanted to have remedial courses, we wanted to have students to be able to get tutoring, and that they might get in based on a specific admissions index, admission, rubric, but they had to graduate based on like everybody else. So anybody who graduated from the University of Washington graduated because they earned it. And, you know, they talk about that DEI stuff, you know. Since 1998, there hasn't been, race could not be used. So students had to get in on their own merit. But what we provided was an opportunity to level the playing field, to do what we call, truly, not equality, equity, you know. And so that was the role that the Office of Minority Affairs has played for the last 58 years, and the role that the Instruction Center, the IC, has played for the last 50 years. And we knew that all along, that it didn't take a rocket scientist to get admitted to college and to graduate. And what we provided gave them an opportunity that sororities and people who came from educated families had. They prepared their students. As a matter of fact, they created high schools in Bellevue, in those areas, high income areas. They created, the high schools, college is just an extension. So that's why they did so well, because they already knew what they needed to do. So what we did is bridge that gap. We knew what you needed to do, what you needed to learn in order to be successful. And we called the Instruction Center, and when you talk about tests, we had a collection of all of it. We studied the professors, so we call ourselves the ICIA, because we figured them out. And once we figured them out, our students took it and ran with it. We had students write perfect finals in chemistry based on our system. So, you know, DEI is just, it's just a ploy to make you feel like you got in that way. They got DEI right now in Trump's administration, but it stands for didn't earn it.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Pastor Carter. I was thinking about why I came today. And I got, first of all, on my phone, invitation. And I'd like to thank you, Marie, for inviting me. This is the first time I've come to a forum like this. He said in 1998, I believe, out of the University of Washington, we had one. It was African American for history and sports Hall of Fame, and I know Pastor Greg Alex was there along with myself and a lot of other athletes. But that's been a long time ago, and so I want to just start. First of all, I'd like to commend all of you because listening to your stories and the recollection, the minds, the memories of all of these events and all of these names and all of these people. Coach, I used to be on one knee when you could talk, and so I know how he can talk. But that really intrigued me. But I want to start with you, Coach, and just work around to it, and I bear it for time. But I just like to thank you for the sophomore coach of the Garfield High School, young coach, young man, and he could relate to young men. He could relate to boys, and he took it to another level when he went to UW. I witnessed this, and I know his brother, and I know the family. Some of the things that he says really touching, but he is really quality individual as a Seattleite in terms of being a native here. He is a legacy, his family's a legacy, and I just want to be here today when I saw your name. It kind of breaks me up to think about how many people that, not just you, Coach, but all of them have stood up, you know, behind the scenes. I'm pretty sure, but across, Randy could imagine, can say that same thing as well as Ricky, Coach Rick, Reeves, nephew. But I can't tell it all, but I was there. I've been around this community a long time. Moving on, since we're talking about the University of Washington, I was one of those students who I went to a junior college. It was Coach Gayton that allowed us to walk on. Everybody gave scholarships, but he says, gotta have some black ball players out there. And he didn't say like that, he was diplomatic and had to meet with the other coaches and everything. But we had a host of ball players that came in on the field during that time, and I couldn't get into names and everything, but they changed the program a lot. Then there was Brother Petrie, Dr. Petrie. He was in minority affairs and all that, and it was a tough pull to try to get with the administration there to get diversity within the university. But the thing he did, they established where people could get housing there, and people would start being recruited, coming from all over the country there. And so the story, there's some individuals that are still living, Brother Gossett and Brother Rye or whoever else that's still here, but it took a team. That's what I heard here today, teamwork. You know, it took a team of people to make that happen during that time. And why I'm kind of broken up is, it seems like there's a void, you know, like that reversal thing. I don't know if it's because of regentrification. I don't know if it's because of I-200, but the times are changing. And I thank God that these men haven't changed. They said that they're staying in the fight. They're still in the fight. And so I was at Reese's last event over in Martin Luther King, and I saw Dr. Petrie for the first time in a long time. Now let me tell you something. I'm 77 years old, be 78 in October. I was one of their mentors, proteges and everything. And so when you start thinking in terms of time, it was these men that helped a lot of people over a period of time. Big James, I was at an event with him. We were doing Bill Norris Brothers event, and then we had an event right here in this very room. And somehow we ended up at lunch. You remember at the Esquires Club. No, it was in a restaurant. It was in a restaurant near the Esquires Club. But I never knew James Donaldson would be so personal, and so trusting. And he told me, he says, well, man, I thought you was one of the ball players too. And I said, no, man, I'm a pastor. And so we just got to know one another. And he was running for office, and he said to me, he says, man, I don't care anything about how do you go about that. He says, I just care about being brothers. Just being brothers, one to another. And that was so cataclysmic. That just blew my mind. And every time I see him, he's always supporting a reef or supporting somebody. Other than playing basketball, I didn't know he was very popular from the Cougars all the way to Sonics. And I never knew that he would be a person like that. And so closing, I'd like to say again, Arif, I'd like to thank you. Arif and I knew each other in Oakland, California. Yeah, and it wasn't nothing like Seattle. But everybody knew Arif. His name, we called him Smitty back then. And he had a spirit of networking. You know, some people have a gift, you know, and everybody would come to his home for situations when we would just fellowship. I didn't put it like that. That's better than party, right? But we'd come to his house, and he would always invite me, and he would introduce me to celebrities, entertainers, actors, the ball players. He knew all the ball players. Let me say this: all the ball players knew him. You know, they wanted to get in contact with Smitty because Smitty could really show them a good time over. And we just thank the Lord for you, Arif, and I thank God for you, Brandon, moderating this event this evening. It's just a great time. You know, I just would like to see this place packed out because it was a worthy cause, and I've lived through all of this. I don't know about some of you others, but I lived through all of this. And so, thank you again for the opportunity.
So we're going to transition to a great opportunity. It is not too often that you have an opportunity to get an authentic and unique signature by the direct author who wrote a meaningful and great book. Today, we have the opportunity to do that with four of them. So give these gentlemen just a couple of minutes, transition to this back left corner, and then hopefully we'll take advantage of the opportunity. Thank you for being here today.
So the battery on my gimbal died. Their manager board, Dr. Jackson, a great event today, and we'll see what I can capture on the other side. Peace.